Hey, welcome to my Reader's Journal. Today I'm going to be talking about Dark Eden by Patrick Carman. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put up a picture of Patrick on the screen because I have come to realize that he is actually a prominent children's author. He's written various books, and I'm also going to include a screenshot of some of the books. That way, you guys can see that he has written more. And that to me is a good sign because it is showing that he is someone who is able to put out his work and people are enjoying it and buying it, and he has been in demand and everything. And that then brings me to this book. This book is a book that is more geared towards like middle schoolers. It says 12 and up. So I read this book like 10 years ago. I think I was 15 when I read it, and I enjoyed it enough in the sense that like I really like the mystery. I think this was one of the first books that I read that had kind of a mystery element to it, and I did like it. I do want to read the premise that way you guys get some context of what the book is about. So the headline is basically "Fear is the Cure." 15-year-old Will Besting is sent by his doctors to Fort Eden, an institution meant to help patients suffering from crippling phobias. Once there, Will and six other teenagers take turns in mysterious fear chambers and confront their worst nightmares. With the help of the group facilitator, Rainsford, an enigmatic guide, when the patients emerge from the chamber, they feel emboldened by the previous night's experiences. But each person soon discovers strange, unexplained aches and pains. What is really happening to the 17s trapped in Dark Eden? Patrick Carman's Dark Eden is a provocative exploration of fear, betrayal, memory, and ultimately immortality. So, again, solid premise. I was intrigued because, again, the whole non spoiler premise of this is you have teens who have been going to therapy for years. They have different phobias, each kid has a different phobia. And one of the mysteries of the story as it's going is that you don't know what phobias the kids have. And that's something that you learn as the book goes. And again, the premise is that they have been going to therapy for so long that they um, just aren't getting better. Like they still have those phobias, and like it's impacting their life. So they're sent to this facility that is supposedly going to heal them. So they go, and then now you have this whole mystery of like, wait, how are they going to get cured? Like, how do you cure a phobia and everything? So, again, that's the whole premise. It also has some mystery aspect because the main character kind of takes an outside perspective. So, even as a reader, you're not getting the full story because the main character has kind of taken himself out of um, the story at some points. So there is that mystery aspect, but a lot of the mystery aspect is simply because you don't know information. It's not that things are hidden and you kind of have to figure it out. It's simply we don't know the information yet, and soon it will be revealed. Would I recommend this book for people? I would say yes. If you're in middle school, I would recommend this book. It does have um, a solid premise, but I would recommend for you to read um, the second book right after this one. So this is pretty much a part one, and then there's another book called Dark Eden, Eve of Destruction, Eve of Destruction. I'm pretty sure. So you should have both books. That way you can read this one and then the next one because one of the things that this book does, kind of at the end, is it gives you answers, but then it really leaves you with some absence. Like it, how do I put it? It just feels incomplete. Like it feels like there's more to be explored. There's more story here, but the book ends, right? So my recommendation is if you are going to read it, get both books. That way you can read this one and then the other one right away. Um, like I said, well, the first time I read this book was like 10 years ago. I did reread it a couple years ago, and then I did read the sequel right after that one. Honestly, couldn't even tell you what happens in the sequel. I just know that the kids, or at least the main character, goes back to the facility. Again, without spoiling why, I just know that he goes back. Um, Other than that, I really don't remember the sequel. And after reading this one again, like I read it a couple of weeks ago, I don't have the desire to read the second one again. I'm in the position where like I know that I don't remember the second book, but I just don't have a desire to read it, so I'm not going to. But that yeah, that's my non-spoiler. Like it if you want to read a middle school grade mystery novel, it's a solid one. All right, so moving forward, I'm gonna be talking about spoiler stuff. So if you want to read the book, don't want to get spoiled, now's the time to leave. But yeah, so this book ends with, and I gotta talk about the ending first. It ends with the villain winning, right? So Rainsford, we find out, has been using people's phobias to basically give him immortality. That's where the immortality comes from. Like he's getting their fears basically into his body, and he becomes younger again. Like all the old sickness stuff that he has, he basically gives it to the other kids, and he becomes young and he's able to live. And he's been doing this for years, so he's been pretty much immortal and everything. So the ending, we have Miss. I don't remember her name, but I'm saying Miss G. Pretty sure her name starts with a G. She gives Will like a recording explaining everything. And that's one thing I didn't like, that the whole book happens and then everything is explained in the last like 5 pages. It feels kind of anticlimactic. Like this whole experience happens, and then instead of things being explained throughout the book, it's all explained by a like video or voice recording that someone did, and you read it in like 5 pages right at the end of the book. So to me, I didn't like that part, but even though I didn't like that was the execution, I did like the actual like story plot, right? I do like the fact that the antagonist is using the kids and he got away with it, right? But that's like one thing that I dislike about the book, but it's not a deal breaker. Like again, at the end, it just feels incomplete, or it just feels like, oh, here's all the answers. Um, but again, I also know that this is a kids book meant for middle school, so I also know that I would say most of the answers to the different mysteries really do need to be like explained through exposition, even if it's at the end. So I understand that, but as someone who is older now, it's kind of like, come on. But I also know that there's a second book that I guess, if I remember correctly, ties everything up. So at least there's that. That's the positive. One thing that I wrote is that although Will's narrative really lets the book live in that mystery aspect, I don't think that he was the best narrator to have for the whole book. I really wish that we had more narration, or some narration, um, with the other characters. Like the premise says there are six other teenagers, and the only narration that we get, the only perspective that we get is Will's. I wish that we had gotten the other kids as well. That way we can get more of their characterizations, because that was another thing that I wrote down, that we don't really get much characterization from them, and they're not really um, in-depth characters. Like they're very simplistic. They have their phobias, and that's it. So I wish that we had gotten like points of views from them. That way we can get their perspectives, their characters, their own thoughts on things, especially since in the book, Will isn't at the facility. He is at oh my god, what's her name? What's her name? He's at the lady's station. So like, okay, think of a mansion, right? That's Fort Eden, the facility, and then like a couple feet away, then you have like a little shed that is basically like a storage shed, um, that has a basement. So Will, is hiding there because he has a phobia of people. Like he is frightened and uncomfortable being around people, so he hides there and everything. Um, so him taking that position back, like not being in the facility with everyone else, we don't get a lot of, I guess, if you want to say exposition, or we don't get a lot of real time in that facility with everyone else with Ransford. Um, so that's something that I think could have elevated the book. Um, moving forward, I put that at times I would be confused when I was reading the descriptions of the settings. I don't know exactly if it's just because the way it was written or if it's just me. I can 100% admit and own up if it's just me not understanding it. But that's just it. Like there was times when people would, Will was describing like the setting around him, or like when he's like traveling and going to different places. Like I would get confused. Like, wait, what's happening? Where are you? But I admit, if it's just me, it's just me. And that's pretty much all that I have. I do have the book rated at 3 out of 5. I don't dislike the book, um, in a sense, but it does have its flaws that I have. Like again, the way that it ended, and then the way that the characters are pretty like superficial. I think if just those two things would have changed, I probably would have moved it up to at very least a 4. Um, because it does have good premise, and I do think that it does allow well. Again, just those two things of like the way it ends and the way like it just feels incomplete, and like there's still more to be done, and the way that the characters don't really have a lot of time to breathe and be their own characters. I think that brings it down. But again, 3 out of 5. Don't dislike it, but I don't like it enough to move it up to a 4. Um, but yeah, that's all I have. If you've read this book, if you also read the second book, go ahead, leave a comment on what you think about the books. Really interested in seeing like, do other people also feel that same way about the ending, or are people actually okay with that? And if it's just me, um, yeah. Thanks for watching.